There is a moment in the making of a made man that never shows up in the movies the way it actually happened. A gun and a knife laid flat on the table, a small paper saint burning down to ash in a man's cupped hands, while he repeats the oldest words in this world. If I betray my friends, may I burn like this saint. That card is not supposed to be cheap. You are supposed to have paid for it already. Years on the street, money kicked upstairs, week after week. Sometimes a body in the ground with your name quietly attached to it. The saint only burns for men who earned the right to hold it. This is a story about 6 men who held that same card, swore that same oath, and paid almost none of it. A boss's son handed a family war before he was 30. A driver made underboss in about the time it takes to break in a pair of shoes. A pornographer who, by the sworn testimony of the man who killed him, never once did the work the button is supposed to demand. And a garbage man who somehow ended up running the most famous crime family in America. Every one of them was made. Not one of them earned it the way the saint demanded. 5 of the 6 are dead, or will die, behind prison walls. So what does the oath actually mean when the saint burns in the hands of a man who never did the work? Let's count it. Start with the one whose name did all the earning for him. In the fall of 1988, John Gotti sat at the top of the Gambino crime family, the most photographed gangster in the country, a man the newspapers had already crowned the Dapper Don. And that Christmas Eve, a group of associates were brought in to be made. One of them was his son, John A. Gotti, known to everyone as Jr., was 24 years old. The received version, the one the tabloids sold and the one most people still carry, is that Jr. was a rising prince, the youngest capo in the history of the Gambino family, blood of the boss, a natural heir. The record tells you how the sausage was actually made. According to Michael DiLeonardo, who was inducted that very same night, Sammy Gravano deliberately arranged for a batch of men to be made all together, specifically so that nobody could stand up later and say the boss had made his own son alone out of pure nepotism. Think about what that tells you. The ceremony itself was staged to hide the thing everyone already knew. Because everyone did know. A button in this world is supposed to be the end of a long apprenticeship. You put in the years, you prove you can earn, you prove you can be trusted with the worst kind of work. And then, if the books are open, your name goes up. Junior's apprenticeship was being born in the right house. Within about 2 years of that ceremony, he was a capo, running his own crew. By many accounts, the youngest man ever handed that rank in the family. And when the federal government finally buried his father under a life sentence in 1992, the crown did not go to a seasoned earner or a war-tested captain. It went to the son. Junior became the acting boss of the Gambino family in his 20s, not because he had climbed to it, but because the name on the door was already his. It did not go well, and that is the part the myth leaves out. The skills you need to run a criminal enterprise are not hereditary. In 1999, Junior pleaded guilty to racketeering and extortion and went away for 6 years and 5 months, along with a fine of $1 million. Later, between 2005 and 2009, the government tried him 4 separate times on racketeering charges, and 4 separate times the juries hung. No conviction, 4 mistrials, and eventually the prosecutors walked away. He has said, ever since, that he left that life behind. What he could never quite leave behind was how he got in. Made at 24, capo by 26, acting boss of a national crime family before he had a single gray hair, all of it arriving on schedule, by blood, before the earning. The button was the one thing in his career that was never in doubt, because it was never really his to win. It was his to inherit. And if you think inheriting a button is a private embarrassment, a family matter, understand that in another borough, in another decade, that exact same handoff put men in the street shooting at each other. Move over to the Bonanno family and go back to 1964. Salvatore Bonanno, called Bill, was the son of Joseph Bonanno, the boss the papers loved to call Joe Bananas. But Bill was not a creature of Brooklyn street corners. He grew up largely in Tucson, Arizona, graduated from Tucson High School, went to the University of Arizona, married Rosalie Profaci, a niece of another powerful boss. He was, by the standards of this world, practically an aristocrat. Gay Talese would later build an entire acclaimed book, Honor Thy Father, around the family, and Bill wrote his own memoir, Bound by Honor. The received version is a groomed heir, a bridge between the old country and the American future. Here is what the record says his father actually did with him. Joseph Bonanno reached down and made his son the consigliere of the family. The consigliere is the counselor, the third seat at the top of the table, the man who is supposed to arbitrate disputes with the wisdom of decades. Bill Bonanno was in his early 30s, and he was elevated over the head of a senior, respected captain named Gaspar DiGregorio, a man with real standing and real years in. To the older soldiers, this was not succession planning. This was a father handing his boy a throne that belonged to men who had bled for it. The resentment did not stay quiet. It curdled into a revolt, and that revolt became known, in the press of the day, as the Banana War. Now be fair to the history. The war had more than one cause. Joseph Bonanno's own naked ambition was a factor. So was his feud with the powerful upstate boss, Stefano Magaddino, and the growing hostility of the National Commission toward the whole Bonanno operation. But the nepotism, the son parachuted in over the captains, is named again and again as one of the leading sparks. A promotion nobody earned helped light a fuse that burned for years, and it got literal. On the night of January 28, 1966, Bill Bonanno and a group of his men went to a supposed peace meeting on Troutman Street in Brooklyn. It was a trap. DiGregorio's faction opened fire in the dark. By the accounts of that night, more than 20 shots were exchanged on a residential street. And here is the strange, almost absurd punchline the record actually delivers. Nobody was hit, not one man on either side. A war sparked in part by a handoff nobody deserved, and its opening ambush could not even manage to kill anybody. The whole thing reads like a tragedy staged by men who were not good enough at their jobs to make it a proper one. So here is the question this entire list keeps circling, and I want you to actually sit with it. If someone could hand you the highest seat in this world without your ever earning it, if you could have the rank and the respect and the envelope for nothing, but you knew that every single man at that table would smile to your face and laugh the moment you left the room, would you take the seat anyway? Or would you rather earn a button so cleanly that no one alive could ever say you didn't deserve it? There is no right answer, and that is exactly why it is worth arguing about. Tell me in the comments. And if you're new here, subscribe. I pull these cases from trial transcripts and federal files every week, so you don't have to. Enter Alphonse Persico, and understand right away that we are talking about the son, not the uncle who shared his name. The Colombo family had 2 Allie Boys, and the men who mix them up get corrected in the comments within the hour. The uncle, the older Alphonse, died in prison back in 1989. The man in this story is Alphonse T. Persico, called Little Allie Boy, born in 1954, the son of Carmine Persico, the boss they called the Snake. And the way Little Allie Boy came to power is maybe the purest engineering of inheritance on this entire list. Carmine Persico spent much of his life in a prison cell, and from that cell he ran the Colombo family for years. But a boss behind bars needs a placeholder on the street, an acting boss, to keep the seat warm and the money moving. What Carmine did, over time, was cycle through those placeholders, Victor Orena, Andrew Russo, Joel Cacace, men who held the chair, until his own son was ready to sit in it. This was not a family choosing its strongest leader. This was a father using the whole apparatus of a crime family as a holding pattern, keeping the throne empty in every way that mattered, so that no one could occupy it permanently except his boy. Around 1996, Little Allie Boy took over as acting boss. The received version is heir apparent, Prince of the Colombos. The record is a chair, guarded by proxies, until the bloodline was old enough to claim it. And the family paid a bill for that arrangement, in a man's life. On May 26, 1999, the Colombo underboss William Cutolo, a genuinely respected figure known as Wild Bill, went to a meeting near 92nd Street and Shore Road in Bay Ridge. An associate dropped him off. He was never seen alive again. His body would not surface for years. In 2007, on December 28th, Alphonse Persico was convicted, along with an associate named John DeRoss, of ordering that murder and of witness tampering. On February 27, 2009, Judge Joanne Seybert sentenced him to life in prison. He is not dead, whatever some sloppy accounts will tell you. He is alive right now, serving that life sentence at a federal prison in McKean, Pennsylvania. A man who inherited a throne his father kept warm for him, and who is spending the rest of his existence paying for the way that world defends an unearned seat. Now watch a different mechanism entirely, because the next man did not inherit a name. He was simply the boss's favorite. Thomas Bilotti, born in 1940, was Paul Castellano's driver, his bodyguard, his shadow. Castellano was the boss of the Gambino family through the late 1970s and into the 80s, a man who fancied himself a corporate executive, and Bilotti was the muscle who opened his car door. There is a description of him that an FBI agent named Joseph O'Brien gave, and it is the most efficient character sketch in this whole story. He called Bilotti, basically, a pit bull with shoes on. That was the man. A blunt, brutal loan shark and labor racketeer, tied up in a steamfitters local, given his own crew back in 1976, when Castellano rose to the top. Loyal, feared, useful, not respected. Not by any reckoning of the captains around him. Boss material. And then Castellano did the thing that broke the family's patience. In early December of 1985, with the longtime underboss Aniello Della Croce recently dead, Castellano moved to make Bilotti his new underboss. The second most powerful man in the Gambino family, a seat that should go to a proven captain, was about to be handed to the boss's driver. Sources described captains who were flatly stunned by it. This was favoritism, raw and open, and everybody in that world could read it. A boss elevating the one man whose only real qualification was that he was reliably at the boss's side. Bilotti had a promotion he had not earned coming to him, and he had roughly 2 weeks to enjoy the idea of it. He never got to sit in the chair. On December 16, 1985, Paul Castellano and Thomas Bilotti drove into Manhattan for a meeting. They pulled up outside Sparks Steakhouse at 210 East 46th Street, in the dark of a midtown evening. A hit team was waiting, assembled at the direction of an ambitious captain named John Gotti and his ally Frank DiCicco, men who had not been consulted about any of this and did not intend to be ruled by Castellano or his driver. Castellano stepped out and was cut down beside his car. Bilotti stepped out on the other side. By the account Sammy Gravano would later give, a shooter named John Carneglia came up on Bilotti and put round after round into him, and other tellings name other gunmen, so the precise trigger stays disputed. What is not disputed is the result. Bilotti died in the street beside the boss who had just promoted him. And here is the terrible arithmetic of it. The promotion he did not earn is the exact thing that put him on that curb. If he had stayed the driver, he might have been an afterthought. Elevated to underboss, he became a target worth killing on the same night as the king. The retirement plan, as ever in this world, was a stretch of pavement. Which brings us to the strangest button of all six, the man who, by the sworn word of his own killer, was never supposed to have one. Robert DiBernardo, known simply as D.B., born in 1937. He was not a shooter. He was not a street guy. He was money. Dabe ran the Gambino family's pornography empire, operating through a distribution outfit called Star Distributors that he had gotten into back in the late 1960s, moving product across the country before most people in that world understood how much cash there was in it. He had originally been affiliated with the DeCavalcante family in New Jersey and was sponsored into the Gambinos by a capo named Ettore Zappi. He was one of the biggest earners the family had. He was also, according to the man who killed him, a fraud in one specific sense. Sammy Gravano, after he flipped and became the most damaging government witness in the family's history, laid it out under oath. And that is the grim irony of DIB's whole story. The clearest account we have of how he lived comes from the mouth of the man who arranged his death. By Gravano's telling, DiBernardo had no crew of shooters, was not a killer, had never done the brutal hands-on work a button is supposed to require. He was made, in effect, as a pure earner, a man kept close to the boss because the money he generated was worth more than the traditions he skipped. There is a long-standing belief, and you should hear it as belief rather than proven fact, that DAB was one of the rare men brought into that world without ever having put a body in the ground. He bought his way to the button with a river of cash, and somehow it gets worse, because being pure profit is precisely the thing that got him erased. Here is how it ended, and I am giving you Gravano's sworn version, because it is the version that exists in the record. On June 5, 1986, with John Gotti, now the boss but sitting in jail, an order came down, relayed through a captain named Angelo Ruggiero, that DiBernardo had to go. DIB was called to a basement office on Stillwell Avenue in the Bensonhurst section of Brooklyn. By Gravano's account, an old man named Peruta was there, and Gravano told him to get DIB a cup of coffee. In a cabinet was a .380 pistol fitted with a silencer. Peruta took it out, walked up behind DiBernardo, and shot him twice in the back of the head. The body was wrapped up and taken away, and it has never been found. DIB had just bought a new 1986 Mercedes-Benz. He had made a phone call about a dinner he was planning to have that very evening. And here is the detail that tells you how cheap the order might really have been. Angelo Ruggiero, the man who relayed the death sentence, reportedly owed DiBernardo around $250,000. The purest earner in this story, the man who bought his button, was worth more to certain people dead than alive. His money made him. His money marked him. And now the payload, the man who wears this whole thesis like a crown that does not fit. Peter Gotti, born in the Bronx in 1939, older brother of John. For most of his adult life, Peter Gotti was not a gangster you would have crossed the street to avoid. He was a New York City sanitation worker, a garbage man. He collected trash for the city, and he eventually retired on a disability pension after an injury, reportedly hitting his head on a garbage truck. Sit with that for a second. While his younger brother was clawing his way to the top of the underworld, Peter was riding on the back of a city truck and filing for disability. Then the name did its work. In that same batch of men made around Christmas of 1988, Peter Gotti got his button. He was about 49 years old. He became a capo the next year, and his real function, by many accounts, was that of a bagman, collecting the weekly tribute money and carrying it to the Bergen Hunt and Fish Club, the Gotti Clubhouse in Ozone Park. Not a strategist, not an earner of any real distinction, a brother with a role. And when the government took John off the board, and then took Junior off the board too, the Crown did the only thing this list has taught you it knows how to do. It fell to blood. Peter Gotti became the acting boss in the late 1990s, and then the official boss of the Gambino family in the early 2000s, the most famous crime family in America, and its throne passed to a former garbage man whose chief qualification was a last name. The people inside that world did not pretend otherwise. On recordings and in testimony, the contempt is on the record, the private eye-rolling of men who could not believe who they were now supposed to answer to. He was mocked. He was called, in the press that covered his downfall, the dumbest Don. And the record of that downfall is brutal and quick. In March of 2003, Peter Gotti was convicted in Brooklyn of racketeering conspiracy, extortion, and money laundering tied to the waterfront, along with a scheme to extort money from the actor Steven Seagal. A judge named Frederick Block sentenced him to 9 years and 4 months. Then, in a separate case in Manhattan, he was convicted in connection with a plot to murder Sammy Gravano, the man whose testimony had helped destroy the family, with a bounty of $70,000 on Gravano's head. For that, he got 25 years. The garbage man who inherited a throne would die on the government's clock. Years later, sick and failing, blind in one eye, with lawyers citing heart trouble and dementia and cancer, Peter Gotti asked to be let out on compassionate release. One of his attorneys argued that even Stevie Wonder could see the old man was no danger to anyone. The judge, Colleen McMahon, was not moved. She noted for the record that this was a man who had headed one of the most vicious and violent organized crime organizations in New York. She said no. And on February 25, 2021, Peter Gotti died in a federal medical prison in Butner, North Carolina, at the age of 81. He inherited the biggest chair in the American underworld, and he never earned a single thing on the street to deserve it. The button that started on the back of a garbage truck ended in a prison hospital bed. Line the 6 of them up, and a pattern comes into focus. And it is not really a story about 6 unlucky or undeserving men. It is a story about an institution, the received version of this world, the one the films sell and the one the men themselves believed, is that the Mafia was a brutal meritocracy, a place where the button was the ultimate proof that you had earned your standing through work and blood and nerve. And for a long stretch of its history, that was closer to true than not. But look at the ledger these 6 leave behind. Across roughly 4 decades and 3 different families, the button and the seats above it stopped flowing to the men who did the work, and started flowing to sons, to brothers, to drivers, to earners. John Gotti Jr. made it 24 by blood, tried 4 times and walking free by 2009. Bill Bonanno, handed a war he helped start, dying quietly in Tucson in 2008. Alphonse Persico, seated by his father from a cell, alive and serving life in McKean. Thomas Bilotti, gifted an underboss chair and killed in the street 2 weeks later, in 1985. Robert DiBernardo, the earner who bought his button, gone in 1986 with no body ever found. And Peter Gotti, the garbage man crowned by his brother's name, dead in a prison hospital in 2021. Inheritance is not a sign of a strong institution. Inheritance is what a dying one does with power it can no longer defend on merit. When the throne becomes a hand-me-down, the kingdom is already going. In that ceremony, the little paper saint burns down to ash in a man's cupped hands, while he swears he already paid for the right to hold it. For these 6, the saint burned exactly the way it burns for everyone else. Same flame, same words, same ash cooling in the same palms. The fire just never once asked what they had actually done to get there.